Rock Talk.
You all set?
Yeah, we're all set.
All right, here we go. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm well, thank
Good.
you.
Where are you calling us from today?
I am in Franklin.
Franklin.
I'm in the mayor's office in Franklin.
Excellent. Well, welcome back to Grok Talk. We haven't had you on for a while. We wanted to get you back in the show. Have a little discussion about this presidential race thing that's going on. Let me turn the.
You think we got one?
You think we got one? Yeah, we got a crowd of people. We got the debates. We got undercard debates. We got all kinds of things going on. Lots of people want to talk about a lot of things. I want to start with the thing I always hear from people who aren't supporting you. When they talk about you, and that's the whole 30,000 employees meme. And it occurred to me, as a person who's actually had to take a business and an operation as an executive and do something with it to make it survive and to be viable, that you made hard choices. Now, I talk to a lot of Republicans, and they're all pretty much small government people. Isn't it a good thing that you're able to, maybe cut something like, say, government?
Well, sure. Look, I led HP during the worst technology recession in 25 years. And a lot of our strongest competitors went out of business altogether, taking every job with them. I saved 80,000 jobs and went on to grow to 160,000 jobs. But yes, leaders need to make tough calls in tough times. And honestly, to your point, government is too big. The only way we reduce the size of government is to not only know where our money is being spent, but we need to reduce the number of people who work for government. And I think one of the things that people are tired of is a lot of tough talk, but no action. Politicians talk. I have a track record of translating goals into results, and I think the American people want results now.
One of your suggestions in making government simpler involves reducing the tax code and dealing with the IRS. Can you briefly explain that to our listeners, please?
Well, look, we have a 73,000-page tax code today, and there have been 4,000 changes to the tax code since 2001. That level of complexity favors big, the powerful, the wealthy, the well-connected. It favors anyone who can hire the army of accountants and lawyers and lobbyists to dig through the tax code. But if you're a small business or you're a family, you're having a hard time understanding what the heck the tax code means for you anymore, and you're probably getting taken advantage of. One of the reasons this never happens, how long have Republicans been talking about tax reform? Kind of forever. But it just gets more and more complicated. So we need to get it down to a level that is so simple that it levels the playing field between the small and the powerless and the big and the powerful. Citizens can help me do this. I'm going to use technology to engage citizens in the process of government to put pressure on the politicians, because we know pressure works. Politicians respond to pressure. But simplicity is as important in tax reform as the rates. So my blueprint, honestly, is lower every rate, close every loophole. There may be one or two deductions that are worth putting back in, but we have so much complexity in a 73,000-page tax code. And by the way, what does that mean? It means we need tons of IRS agents. Do you know that we have more IRS agents today than we have FBI and CIA combined? Boy, is that broken.
That's really broken. And I heard you said 3 pages. It always amuses me. Obamacare's over 2,000 pages. The British National Health Service, not that I'm a great fan of it, was 47 pages.
Yes, and by the way, Obamacare, the legislation may be 2,000 pages, but then it's accompanied by thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of pages of additional regulation written by a set of nameless, faceless bureaucrats in HHS. We have become a nation of rules, not a nation of laws. Rules. Who are these rule makers? I don't care whether it's the HHS, the EPA, the FCC, the NLRB. These are not elected people. They're not accountable to anyone. They're just rolling out rules that are consistent with their liberal ideology. And it's one of the reasons we have to put Congress back in charge. I have said for a long time, not only do we need to pass the zero-based budgeting bill, but we need to pass the REINS Act, which puts Congress back in charge and says you can't roll out regulations unless Congress acts on them.
Would you actually favor closing a number of the agencies? I know you've indicated there's a huge amount of duplication, but just closing some and letting the states run their own affairs.
Well, first of all, there are so many things where the federal government is doing things they shouldn't be doing at all. At the Department of Education, there are set of things in HHS that we should be rolling to the states. However, I also believe that we need to start at a different place. We need to start with zero-based budgeting, which means that we look at every dollar in every agency. Because the truth is, there is massive amounts of reform necessary in every single agency. We should use the Constitution as our guide. What is it the federal government is actually supposed to be doing? But we don't know where our money is being spent anymore. And the reason government gets bigger and more expensive year after year for 40 years, under Republicans, by the way, as well, not just Democrats, is because we never talk about all the money. We just talk about the rate of increase over last year's money. And the reason the federal government spends more money every year but never has enough money to do the important things is because all the money is already spoken for. So we need to go down to the studs, if you will, and look at every single dollar. Because while there are agencies that certainly may literally be eliminated, there is no agency that is immune from fundamental reform, top to bottom.
What do you see right immediately in the executive? You know, we've added all these czars and all this other garbage that goes on there. Where do you cut there? I mean, do you walk in on day one and say goodbye, czars?
Oh, absolutely. And by the way, I also walk in on day one and roll back all of the rules that have been rolled out under the Obama administration. There is no legislative or constitutional authority for these rules. The National Labor Relations Board just decides on a purely partisan basis that it is going to change the relationship between franchisees and franchisors, a business model that has worked to create thousands and thousands of small businesses all across this country. It needs to be rolled back. The EPA's Clean Power Plan, the EPA's Waters of the U.S. Plan, those need to be rolled back. The FCC's 400 pages of regulation over the Internet passed on a purely partisan basis by a bunch of bureaucrats, and the FCC needs to be rolled back. The executive order on immigration. I mean, there are a whole set of things that need to be rolled back. And who are czars? We don't need czars. Czars also are unaccountable, unelected bureaucrats.
This is exactly the kind of thing that we like to hear. And I'd be, I think, correct in assuming that since all of these regulations and the orders from the White House that may have triggered some of them are, in fact, not caused by legislation, they can be undone by executive order just the same way that they were created.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Super. I do have a question for you in respect of, I think you're doing a pretty good job of defining yourself before they define you. What I've noticed is that your standing in the polls seems to depend primarily on your debate visibility, which you've done a fantastic job at. What else is the campaign doing to increase your visibility level to ensure that everybody that needs to know about your message is getting it?
Well, let me say first with regard to polls that, polls are hardly reliable at this point. I mean, we've seen that in previous election cycles, but you all are also, I'm sure, familiar with what happened in Kentucky, where a poll was taken 24 hours before the election and was 17 points off. The only reason people are obsessing over national polls right now is it determines debate stage placement. And I will just note that I started my campaign on May 4th. I was 16 out of 16. In fact, polling companies didn't even ask my name because less than 4% of voters had ever heard my name. And now here I am on a debate stage with 7 other candidates. No other candidate has the trajectory that I have had while I have been building my name ID. So what I have been doing, in addition to talking with folks like you, because you touch and influence so many people, and I'm grateful for the opportunity, getting on regional media as well as national media, I go out and meet voters. I'm really grateful to the voters in New Hampshire because they took me seriously from the very first moment I started coming up here. It's one thing to appear on a television screen, and that's important. It's another thing to talk in a radio interview. That's important. But actually, a lot of voters need to look you in the eye. They need to shake your hand. They need to understand who you are. And we're going to continue to do all those things. And I'll just remind all of your listeners that polls don't win elections. Voters do. Voters have to vote. And so getting out there and getting voters to understand who I am and what I will do, and the fact that I have a track record, not just about of talking about things. I have a track record of getting the things I talk about done. And that's what we need in Washington now. Someone who can get it done.
I'm sorry. We're down to about a minute. How do people reach you? What are your social media tags and handles and things? And
well, go to Carly for President. Go to Carly for President. We got every handle there is out there. We're easy to find. And I will look forward to staying in touch with both of you and with your listeners as well.
Well, thanks so much for making time for us.
And Skip wishes he could be here today, but he has to go visit with his son, who's a vet.
Then Skip is in the right place.
Skip is
my best.
Skip is exactly in the right place. I'll catch up with the campaign at some point on the road in the next couple of weeks. Try and do it in person. Otherwise, keep up the great work, and we look forward to hearing more from you.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Rock.